The gift no one wanted, the grand hall of Baron Tazek's palace, was filled with music, laughter, and cold-hearted aliens dressed in gold and silk. High above, glass walls showed the swirling stars, and servants moved quietly with trays of glowing drinks. It was supposed to be a celebration, but it was really just another show of power, where the strong made the weak feel small. Baron Tazek, ruler of Sector 5, stood at the center, smiling with sharp teeth. He raised a cup and called for silence. "My friends," he shouted, "tonight, I offer a gift so ... rare. It will bring laughter for years." The guests leaned forward. Everyone knew the Baron liked strange surprises. "Tonight," he said, pointing to a covered hover chair, "I give this precious thing to our guest from Earth, the human engineer." A spotlight turned to a young man standing quietly in the corner. Mason. He wore simple clothes, his hands stained with oil and metal. He had been hired to fix broken machines at the palace. Nothing more. The cover was pulled away. Inside the hover chair sat a young alien woman. She had soft purple skin and long silver hair, but her body was completely still. Her arms rested in her lap like lifeless stone, her legs unmoving, and her face frozen. Her eyes, though wide open, did not blink. She looked like a statue, beautiful, silent, broken. The hall burst into laughter. "Behold," the Baron said proudly, "my daughter Zira, a true gem. She cannot walk, cannot talk, cannot even feed herself. But she makes an excellent decoration. Or perhaps a pet for our human guest." Mason's face stayed calm, but his hands tightened into fists. "She is yours now, human," the Baron said, smirking. "Do with her what you will. I release all claims." The other nobles laughed harder. Some wiped their eyes. "This is too much," one alien chuckled. "A paralyzed daughter given to a mechanic. What will he do? Fix her with a wrench?" Mason walked slowly toward the chair. The lights followed him. He did not speak. He stood in front of Zira and looked into her eyes. Everyone waited for him to react. Would he laugh? Would he throw her aside? Would he curse the Baron? Instead, Mason kneeled. He gently reached out and brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. Then he placed a hand on hers. Zira did not move. But for a brief second, something flickered behind her eyes. No one else saw it, but Mason did. He turned his head and looked directly at the Baron. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I accept your gift." The hall went silent. No laughter. No jokes. The Baron raised an eyebrow. "You accept her?" "Yes," Mason said. "Why?" asked a noble, confused. "She's broken." Mason stood and looked at them all. "You only see what she cannot do." "I see what she still can." They did not understand. Some thought he was mad. Others whispered that maybe humans were strange, emotional creatures. Mason walked behind the chair and began to push it. As he passed the crowd, many stepped back in surprise. He was not embarrassed. He walked with pride, as if he was leaving with a treasure, not a burden. Zira's eyes, dull and cloudy just moments ago, began to shine a little brighter. No one else noticed. But Mason saw again. He whispered so only she could hear. "I don't know what they did to you, but I'll never treat you like a joke." And then, as he guided her out of the palace, he felt the smallest movement. Her finger. It twitched. Not by accident. It twitched again. Mason didn't smile. He just squeezed her hand gently. In that moment, something new began, not just a journey of healing, but a quiet war against everything cruel and heartless in the stars. And it had started with a joke that backfired. The gift no one wanted became the beginning of a legend. The room she never imagined. Door creaked open as Mason pushed Zira's hover chair into a small living quarters deep inside the lower sector of the city. It was not made of gold or crystal like the Baron's palace. No servants waited. No lights danced across glass ceilings. But the air was warm, and the space smelled of tools, oil, and something rare fresh bread. Mason turned on the lights, revealing a room filled with machines, gadgets, and metal parts stacked in every corner. But near the window he had cleared. A small area soft blankets, a padded seat, and a low table with a glass of water and a single flower in a broken cup. "I didn't have much time," he said softly, "but I wanted you to have your own space." Zira, still unable to speak or move fully, simply stared ahead. Her body remained still, but her eyes followed the soft flicker of the flower's shadow on the wall. It was a tiny thing, but no one had ever placed a flower in her room before. Mason moved beside her and pulled out a small scanner. "I don't know what kind of damage they think you have," he whispered, "but I can feel it. You're in there. Your mind isn't broken, just locked away." He placed a hand near her neck, checking the nervous connections with gentle fingers. "You're not just a gift to mock me," he continued. "You're a person. You just need someone to believe that." Days passed. Mason didn't ask questions. He just worked. He fed her, bathed her, and built small machines to make her more comfortable. He didn't treat her like a doll. He talked to her as if she could hear, and deep inside she could. Every night, he sat by her side, reading aloud from a worn book of Earth stories. He told her about birds, trees, oceans, things she had never seen, but now imagined through his words. And every now and then she blinked, once for yes, twice for no. The first time she did that, Mason froze. "You understand me?" he asked. She blinked once, his breath caught. He laughed, not like a madman, but like someone who had just discovered treasure in trash. "You're in there," he whispered, tears in his eyes. "You really are." From that day, he changed everything. He began drawing blueprints for a neural band that could connect Zira's brain activity to a computer. It was a crazy idea, too human, too low-tech for the aliens to care about. But Mason didn't care what others thought. He worked every night, sleeping in short naps, eating only when his body begged. He built a prototype on a rainy evening. Lightning flashing across the city's sky dome, Mason gently placed the neural band across her head. It hummed softly at first. Then a light turned green. "Zira," Mason said carefully, "if you can hear me, try to move your finger. Just one." He waited. Nothing. He waited longer. Still nothing. His shoulders slumped. Maybe he had imagined the blinking. Maybe then her finger moved. Once. Then again. Not random. Not twitching. Controlled. Mason fell to his knees beside her. "You did it. You really did it," he said, voice shaking. "They left you to rot like you were nothing. But you're here. And now we fight." Zira's eyes turned to him, not just moving, but focused, alive. In her mind, long locked behind silence, a single thought rose like sunlight breaking through clouds. "He sees me." No one ever had before. But now her body might be broken. Yet her hope had never been stronger. The mime they couldn't silence. The news didn't spread through headlines. It didn't echo in palaces or flow through noble channels. It started in whispers among janitors, scrap traders, and low-class medics. The paralyzed girl, she moved. The rumor was small at first, too unbelievable to take seriously. But in the back alleys of the alien city, truth often lived where power did not. Inside Mason's workshop, the world was changing. Zira now blinked with purpose. One blink meant yes. Two meant no. Mason had set up a simple screen that showed shapes and letters controlled by the slightest movements from her temple. Her thoughts, once trapped inside, were now making contact with the world. It started with simple words. "Thank you." Mason stared at the message on the screen, his heart beating fast. He wasn't expecting that to be her first real sentence. "I should be the one thanking you," he whispered, eyes misty. Zira's next message appeared a moment later. Why me? Mason sat beside her. Because everyone else saw a broken body. I saw a living mind, and minds can be repaired, even rebuilt, even set free. Zira stared at him, still processing emotions she hadn't been able to express for years, if ever. Outside the shop, though, danger stirred. Baron Tazik was not a man who liked change. He thought the matter was closed. He had gotten rid of the girl who embarrassed his family name. But now, she was being talked about again, alive, aware. He summoned one of his spies. Watch them. If this becomes a problem, I want it ended. Back in the workshop, Mason's upgrades continued. The neural band was replaced with a more advanced version that picked up faster signals. One day, Zira managed to move her left arm. It shook, unsteady and slow, but it moved. She cried silently when it happened. Mason didn't speak. He simply reached for her hand and squeezed it once. From that point on, something inside Zira shifted. She didn't want to just survive anymore. She wanted to live. Each day brought small victories. A toe twitch. A clearer message. And one morning, her voice dry and soft escaped her throat. Ma. Son. He froze, nearly dropping his tool. Zira, he whispered. She tried again. Thank you. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he knelt before her. You spoke. That same day, someone broke into the shop. Wires were ripped. The neural device smashed. The backup power drained. Mason came home to find the door open and Zira's systems offline. For the first time in days, her eyes were dull again. Panic filled his chest. But Zira blinked. Once. She was still there. Still fighting. Mason didn't call the authorities. He knew they wouldn't care. Instead, he dug into his own backup plans. He rebuilt everything within 2 nights, working through exhaustion and pain. Zira watched him work, something deep in her heart changing. She had been nothing more than an andengingtem unfanfano object all her life. But now, this human was rebuilding her world piece by piece, with hands that trembled from lack of sleep but never stopped. She wanted to speak again, not because she was forced to, but because this time she had something to say. When the new neural link activated, she typed her next message carefully. You don't know what you've done. Mason tilted his head. What do you mean? Zira looked at the screen, then at him, her eyes sharp now. Awake. You didn't fix me, Mason. You freed me. And far across the city, in the shadows of towers built on cruelty, the Baron's spy watched the lights flicker in Mason's shop. The girl was no longer just a joke. She was becoming a symbol, and symbols are dangerous. Fire in her silence. Rain struck the roof hard that night, tapping like a warning from the stars above. Inside the workshop, Zira was sitting upright, no longer just a still body in a chair, but a presence. She wasn't fully mobile yet, but she had a voice now, even if soft. And she had thoughts clear, powerful thoughts that traveled through Mason's machines like sparks through copper wire. Mason was adjusting a new frame on her chair, whispering measurements to himself while Zira watched him. On her screen, a sentence appeared. You always look tired, Mason chuckled. That's because I am tired, but you're worth it. Zira stared at him. No one had ever said that to her before. You're worth it. She didn't know how to answer. So she blinked once and let the silence speak. But just outside the building, someone else was listening. Hidden in the dark, a figure twisted wires at the power panel. He moved quickly, leaving behind a blinking device tucked behind the backup generator. Then he vanished into the alley. At exactly midnight, it triggered. The lights flickered, then exploded. Flames burst from the back of the workshop. Sparks flew through the ceiling. Smoke spread fast, choking the air with bitter heat. Mason shot up, coughing. The system had gone dark. Zira's screen turned black. No, no, no. Mason shouted, racing toward her. The fire was already swallowing the walls, inching toward Zira's chair. Her body couldn't move fast enough. Her hands twitched, her voice rasped, but the heat kept coming. Mason didn't think. He leapt through the smoke, ripped off his jacket, and wrapped it around her. The flames licked at his arms as he pulled her chair toward the door, coughing hard with every step. The fire singed his clothes, burned his skin, but he didn't stop. With one last push, he kicked the door open and rolled her outside into the rain. Cold water poured from the sky, putting out the fire that clung to his sleeves. He collapsed next to her, panting, holding his side. Zira looked at him. Her eyes filled with something no machine could measure: fear, anger, pain, and something deeper: care. You saved me, she whispered. Mason tried to smile through the smoke stains. Of course I did. She looked at his burned hands. They were shaking. She couldn't help him. She couldn't even lift a cup of water. That helplessness cut deeper than the fire ever could. Later, they sat together under a makeshift shelter. Rain still falling lightly. Zira's screen flickered back to life, barely powered. Why would someone do this? Mason's voice was quiet. Because some people fear what they can't control. And you're no longer their prisoner. Zira blinked. I hate being weak. Mason shook his head. You're not weak. You're wounded, and you're healing. She stared at the stormy sky. Her voice came again, hoarse but firm. I want to stand. Mason turned to her slowly. Then we'll build something to help you stand. For the next few days, the fire didn't burn in the walls, it burned in her eyes. She trained with Mason's help, slowly rebuilding her connection to her limbs. The neural bands were repaired, improved. Mason created new supports: exoskeletal legs, powered braces, and arm extensions controlled by her thoughts. And then, on a silent morning, just before dawn, Zira placed both feet on the ground. She wobbled. Her legs shook. Sweat formed on her brow. But she stayed standing. Mason watched her rise, and this time he was the one speechless. She turned her head, smiled softly, and whispered, "No more cages." And far across the city, behind dark windows, Baron Tazek learned of the fire and her survival. His eyes narrowed. She wasn't supposed to survive. She wasn't supposed to fight. But she had, and now she would not stop. The daughter who defied the grand hall of Baron Tazek's palace had not changed. It still gleamed with polished marble, high glass ceilings, and walls carved with the names of every noble ancestor. But this time the air was different: heavy, tense, and cold with silence. The Baron stood before his advisors, a broken glass in his hand and fury in his voice. She was a decoration, he snarled. A discarded heir, a symbol of shame. And now she walks beside a human? No one dared answer. He slammed the table. That girl should have never opened her eyes again. She was a joke. But the joke was gone. In its place stood a woman with fire in her heart and a will stronger than metal. Back in the lower sectors, the workshop doors opened slowly. Zira stepped out, not in a hover chair, not in silence, but upright. Her body still needed support, braces along her legs, and a stabilizer belt powered by Mason systems. But her back was straight, her eyes sharp. She wore a suit Mason had made from human and alien fabrics, stitched with care and patience. She didn't look like a forgotten daughter anymore. She looked like someone reborn. Mason followed behind, eyes full of pride and quiet worry. "You're sure about this?" Zira nodded. "I'm not hiding anymore." They made their way to the public hall of records, open to all species, a place where noble eyes never looked. But today, Zira stood before the central console and placed her hand on the scanner. Her voice, though soft, echoed across the hall. I am Zira Tazik, daughter of Baron Tazik. I have returned. Gasps filled the room. A young clerk dropped his pen. Others whispered and moved closer. I was not lost. I was thrown away. But I claim my name, and I choose freedom. She uploaded documents, recorded proof, and published her full recovery logs to the public database. Within minutes, her voice traveled across comms, forums, and back channels. Screens lit up in noble towers. Servants whispered the news. Traders sent messages to nearby planets. Baron Tazik received the alert while sipping dark wine. He read that broadcast again and again. His face turned pale. She named me. He muttered. His advisor spoke carefully. Legally. She has the right to challenge your guardianship and reclaim family power if she can prove independence. The Baron's hand trembled with rage. She wants war. That evening, a black shuttle landed outside Mason's workshop. 3 armored guards stepped out and knocked. Mason opened the door, calm but ready. They didn't speak to him. Their eyes were on Zira. Our orders are to bring you back, one said. Zira stood behind Mason, then stepped forward on her own. I'm not going back. The lead guard narrowed his eyes. You don't get to decide. Yes, she replied. I do. She walked forward, unshaken, and stopped right in front of them. I'm no longer under the Baron's care. I'm no longer under anyone's control. Tell my father I choose my own life now. The guards hesitated. They weren't trained. For a walking miracle. For a woman who should not even be speaking, much less standing in defiance. Mason stepped beside her. You heard her. The guards retreated for now, but the message was clear. The daughter they had discarded had returned not with hate, but with strength. And for the first time in her life, Zira felt no shame carrying her name. Later, as the stars rose over the city, she typed a quiet message on her old screen. Why did you fight for me, Mason? He looked at her and answered without pause. Because you were worth more than how they treated you. I just gave you the chance to prove it. She stared at him for a long time. And then, for the first time, she smiled not in gratitude, not in sorrow, but in power. Because now she knew at 2 asterisk the machine they feared, the galactic invention. Fair wasn't meant for people like Zira. It was an elite event where nobles showed off weapons, flying palaces, and tech designed to impress, not help. The rich came to compete with jewels on their skin and bodyguards at their side. No one expected anything from a human engineer or a girl once labeled broken. But this year, something changed. A low hum filled the air as a new entrant stepped onto the stage. The lights caught the curve of a sleek metal frame, part armor, part exosuit glowing with soft pulses of energy. At its center stood Zira, standing tall without crutches, her silver hair braided behind her, her purple skin shining under the dome lights. The suit didn't carry her. It responded to her. Each step was her own dot, and beside her stood Mason, hands behind his back, dressed in clean but simple earth clothing. They said nothing, but the silence grew louder than all the noise around them. The judges raised their brows. One of them, a 6-eyed alien named Jarlik, sneered. And what is this supposed to be? Zira stepped forward, her voice steady. This is not a weapon. This is freedom. A body rebuilt with purpose. A design that gives back what the universe tried to steal. Jarlik leaned forward. Freedom is for those born strong. Zira met his gaze. Then I was reborn. The crowd stirred. Camera zoomed in. Some nobles whispered. Some mocked, but others listened. The demonstration began. Zira moved through an obstacle course made for elite soldiers. Stairs, barriers, sharp turns. She moved with grace, slower than trained warriors, but steady, clean, powerful. When she lifted a power core with the help of her suit's strength, A few judges actually stood up in disbelief. "This isn't just tech," one whispered. "It's a breakthrough." Reporters rushed to cover it. Mason explained, "The exosuit reads neural signals through a lightweight eye matrix. The wearer doesn't need full motor control, just thought clarity. It adapts, it evolves, and it's affordable." The last word sent shock through the wealthy. "Affordable?" a noble snapped. "You're saying anyone could use this?" "Yes," Mason replied. "That's the point." Zira added, "This isn't for parades. It's for the forgotten. For the people your systems call useless." The room fell silent. But across the floor, Baron Tazik had arrived uninvited but very visible. His robe swept behind him as he approached. "My daughter," he said coldly, still trying to embarrass me. Zira didn't flinch. "You gave me away like trash." "That was your choice." "What I do now, that's mine." Tazik looked at the suit. "You can walk, but you're still weak." She stepped closer. "I stood without you, and now I stand against you." Gasps echoed. 1,000 lenses flashed. Baron Tazik scoffed. "Do you think the council will listen to a human and a broken girl in a suit?" Zira didn't answer with words. She simply turned around and faced the crowd. Then she raised one hand, and the suit unfolded into an elegant display, wires, circuits, all visible and glowing. She showed them everything. "No secrets. No patents. This is for all who need it," she said. "I will not sell it. I will share it." The crowd erupted, not with claps. With cheers. And the judges? They gave her first place. That night, Zira and Mason stood outside the fair, looking up at the stars. Zira whispered, "Do you think this changes anything?" Mason smiled. "It already has. You changed everything." And far in the shadows, the Baron watched the broadcast again and again. This was no longer his daughter. She was becoming a revolution, and he was running out of ways to stop her. **, the name she gave herself. The galaxy remembered her now not as a burden, not as a joke, but as the girl who stood, who walked, and who gave others hope to rise. What started as whispers in low halls had grown into waves across systems. Messages flooded the interplanetary net. Refugees, veterans, injured workers, and once forgotten citizens were asking a single question: how do we get one of her suits? But Zira didn't open a business. She opened a movement. The design was free. Mason uploaded every blueprint to the public domain with instructions translated into 40 alien languages. No patents, no licenses, just access. Across backwater planets and forgotten moons, engineers copied the suit with scrap and scrap alone, and for the first time in history, people who had been discarded found a way to stand again. In one solar week, over 200 working units were built across 3 systems, and that's when the Galactic Noble Council called an emergency session. Baron Tazik, now under pressure from angry nobles and curious commoners, stood at the center of the council. "Floor, she's turning sympathy into chaos," he growled. "This technology empowers weakness. It upsets natural order." Another noble leaned forward. "You mean she threatens your control?" The vote was called. The council shocked itself. They sided with her. They refused to ban her work. Tazik stormed out of the chambers, humiliated. The doors slammed behind him as a crowd gathered outside, cheering a name he thought would never be spoken again: Zira. Back in the workshop, Zira was quiet. She didn't smile at the news. She didn't shout in victory. Instead, she sat at her desk, her hands folded over a worn data pad. On the screen was a letter, one she had written and rewritten 100 times. At last, she sent it. "To the people of the stars who were told they were nothing, I was once like you. Unseen, unwanted, left to rust. But I found a human who didn't ask what I was worth. He simply believed I was. You don't need permission to rise. You only need one person who sees your light. If you haven't found them yet, then let me be the first. Stand with me. Zira. Daughter no more. Mason watched her from across the room. You sure about that name? She turned to him, eyes warm and steady. I don't want to carry the title of a man who threw me away. He nodded. Then what do we call you now? Zira stood, this time unaided, and walked to the window. Stars blinked across the endless black like tiny promises. I call myself Zira of the Unbroken. He smiled. It suits you. Just then, a message chimed in from the outer colonies. A young girl, born without legs, had taken her first steps wearing a suit built from Zira's plans. Her mother cried as the child walked toward her, arms wide. Zira wiped a tear from her own cheek. Mason placed a hand on her shoulder. You started. Something they can't stop. And far above, in a world where status once meant everything, one paralyzed girl had become more powerful than kings. Not through war, not through riches, but by standing and helping others stand too.